Hello, this is another session about the technical installation of Enterprise Architect, and today's challenge is to activate security with single sign-on based on OpenID, where OpenID is hosted by Azure Active Directory Connect, and how to register Enterprise Architect as an application is the topic of today's installation challenge. First of all, we have to start a new project. So where we want to have security enabled, I take a new one, and this is AD Connect. To activate security, Enterprise Architect allows to use all kinds of projects, meaning the local project, server connection, or cloud connection. In this case, I just use a local repository, and that just activate a security. To activate security, there is a secret key that you do not deactivate or activate it by accident. So you should know, and you know this key. It's not really secret, but this is a key that you have to enter here. And now it's activated. If you do it the first time, please read the dialog. It says what is the password. And now I have the possibility to log in as another user with a very secret to log in into this repository. The password is password in English. So new features are, it's not that new, but there are new features around OpenID identification. And if you want to have OpenID authentication, there is a configuration screen. And if you are not familiar with Out2 and so on, it's maybe a little bit tricky, and all the OpenID vendors are a little bit different. And therefore I took this session because how to use Keycloak is very well known, and it's very transparent, and you have the source code where you can log in. But if you want to use the new features of Azure in the direction of Active Directory Connect, so meaning the OpenID implementation of Microsoft, then it's sometimes a little bit challenging to find out what really to define. So the logic, the minimum scope is you need OpenID, but what we have to configure in Active Directory to get in Azure to get the right information here is that what we want to identify now. So I jump over to my Azure environment, and sorry for the German one, I have no idea how to switch to English if I'm already in this environment. There is an app registration possibility, and I can start a new registration, and I will name it Sparx demo registration 01, and I can decide who is allowed to use this application or the API, and this is the tenant is from Peter Lieber, and it could be other organization units, or it could be also private Microsoft accounts. Currently they just try to avoid private accounts. And what is also, yes, that's all for the current moment. And now we have a Sparx demo account, and we have the client ID. And this is the first information we can already copy. Go back to Enterprise Architect, and we have here the client ID where that we can paste here. So the client ID is that what it's named application ID or client is already existing there. What you also have here is the so-called endpoints, and the endpoints, and you see already here this well-known something, and this is also default because here well-known something is already there. So we have to copy the OpenID URL from this endpoint area. Everything before this one is my OpenID connect metadata document, and I can paste it already here. And you see that it's automatically fulfilling the well-known OpenID configuration, and so we have almost the first definition done. A very important thing is what is the thing to match is the login that is there must match to a login that comes from OpenID. So if I go back to my configuration, here is my endpoints, then I have now to configure something how to get information back. Typically you have, of course, things like branding and authentication. In authentication, it's again, we have the possibility to add a specific platform. And the platform could be web, could be single web application, iOS, Android, but it could also be a desktop application. And there, the backlink is a very important thing, and the backlink is the thing that is configured here. By default, it's not changeable because Enterprise Architect only takes port 4x8 on localhost to react on the OpenID callback. So it's a host. So this is what I have to copy here, and now I can configure that this is the callback URL. Additionally, it makes sense that we have also a kind of desktop mobile flow. This is also a thing that you have to activate, and then last but not least, save it. Another thing is a secret or a certificate. I'm not 100% sure. It's possible to have your secret client key. This is the client secret that you also can configure in Enterprise Architect. But sometimes it does not do what you expect because of a public ID, and nevertheless make the risk low to make it work. But what we need is optional claims. It's in German optional Ansprüche. We need optional claims, and for the identification we want to use email as an example, but you can also take family name, given name. We can ask for the IP address. It's not very important for Enterprise Architect itself because I will map to the email address. But you have also other activation possibilities. For some OpenID Connect areas, we need also the Microsoft Graph authentication, and so we have to activate this structure to have Microsoft Graph authentication available. So now we have defined email, so I can jump back to Enterprise Architect and extend the scope to email, and email should also be the mapping point for Enterprise Architect to verify my results. So everything is configured right now. We have activated the account. Maybe there is some user challenge, so we need maybe a role and allowance for something, but it looks everything good. So if we go for tokens, it could be that this maybe an authentication is required, but we will see what happens right now. So if I want to test it, I go there and can already start with the login authentication. And the first is the question if I'm allowed to give the rights to this accounts for requests. I can agree that this is acceptable for me. And now it says test succeeded, so the integration of OpenID with Azure is working fine. And we have here already a assigned user. It's peter.lieber@lieber.systems. So this could be the first user for authentication. The interesting thing that it remembers your login. So if I want to use a different user, okay, it quits automatically the browser. Why ever? So I open a browser again. So if I want to log in as a different user, it could be that it's necessary that you have to log out actively before, because it remembers your credentials and settings. So for applications, there is some configuration. So, but I can log off here. No, I can add another user. So I can say, okay, there is another role and administrator, and I want to have another business owner. Don't ask, I just make it easier because I want to add a demo account that I want to give all the rights to, because I always want for demos to work with demos, and now we have the complete rights also for demos. Of course, you can define the roles and administrators also for this group of knowledge, but what I will do now is to log out. So, and now I test again OpenID Connect, and it asks me which user account I want to use. I want to use a different one. I take this a01.demo.lieber.group, Then I have to log in. Should be the right account. And now I'm logged in, and this account I can really use. So I will add this user, meaning I demo at liber.group. It's me. Then I can also assign the correct rights. Also save it again. And only activate this restrict access to OpenID users only if you're really sure that everything is configured right. But what I will do now, if I close this model, so I close this project and I reopen this project, then I can log in with OpenID Connect, and because I'm logged on already, it will just jump through and accepts the authentication. Okay, if it is already configured, but I have closed it before. Liber.group. And now I'm logged in as the other user. So currently I'm Peter Lieber in this configuration. So that's the complete trick that you have this mapping with this OpenID Connect. Thank you for attending this session, and goodbye.